Hi everyone. I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm just not well enough, but I'm grateful to be part of what I know is an amazing event. And TC gave us an easy assignment. He said that whatever we did, he wanted us to do something that would enable everybody in the room to experience God or some kind of spiritual experience. So I'm going to do my best to do that with poetry. But first I need to tell you something about my relationship with God. When I was growing up, I had a very strong sense of God's presence. I think that this is directly related to having been trans and living in hiding. I didn't feel connected to my body. I didn't feel connected to my male persona. And I think that that enabled me to, that quieted some of the noise of human attachment and enabled me to be aware of God being with me. In fact, God seemed a lot more real to me than I did. I wasn't real. I was, just pretending to be a person. But God was really there. That relationship, that sense that there was at least somebody who was there and who knew me as I really was or should have been, got me through most of my life. When I started living as myself, I thought that I would no longer have problems writing poems in the autobiographical first person, which every American poet that I've ever heard of does almost as easily as breathing. But for me, that had been something that I avoided because I felt that when I said I in a poem, people would always mistake it for the male persona that I was writing as. So I either wrote persona poems or I wrote very distanced poems or I avoided the first person altogether. So now I'm living as myself. I think, great, this writing in the first person is going to be easy. But it wasn't, because I wasn't used to being a person. I wasn't used to having an I that really meant I. So most of the poems in the first couple of books that I wrote as myself rely heavily on the second person. That changed when I got really sick and I thought I was dying. Or even worse, I thought that I was losing the ability to think and write. And that I had to write whatever was important to me, I had to write now because I had no idea how long I'd be capable of doing it. And I started furiously writing a book of Psalms, poems that were directly addressed to God. And I found that when I was talking to God in poems, it was easy for me to say I and to speak as myself, because God had always been the person that I could talk to who really knew who I was. So these really are the first persons that I wrote. They're really the first poems that I wrote in a first person that referred to me. Here I go. There's nothing here that's not your fault. Not bees' enslavement to nectar's labyrinths, not the cacophonous greens shaking themselves out like tangled hair, not the sinking shiver of my blood, or the phantom footsteps of disease that haunt my spinal column, searching for bits of self to seize, the way you seize on bits of self you somehow lost in me. Not the terror stirring my depths like the sea monsters you created when you were in the creation business. Not the bombs your children strap on to detonate in streets crowded with children you seem, in a flash, to have forgotten. No, I can't not blame you for a single second of the light that penetrates me non-consensually, dawn after dawn, impregnating with hope, desire, need, A body that couldn't care less how far away you seem, even when you're oppressively close, stuffing my nostrils with blossoming breath, drowned hair dripping over my breasts, dripping fragrance, dripping smoke, dripping your most corrosive acid, possibility. When I started writing that, I was really angry to have found myself so sick right after I started feeling like I had a body. And the idea in these poems was that I was going to force God to be there with me, no matter how lousy I was feeling. I didn't expect that when I started talking to God, God would already be there. Here's another poem. Yes, I hear the question in your voice in the question that wrenches my stars of pain into constellations, twins and serpents, and a woman who has no face, staring in a mirror at the emptiness between them. Yes, emptiness is my answer to your question, a small, swept space that neither storms nor aches, a little orphaned mouth whose lips are made of silence. Yes, I understand your silence in the face of a woman you cannot face, because you have erased her attempts to find some shape, some constellation, in your glimmering syllables of pain that seem to ask her nothing. Yes, I know that nothing is the only voice in which you can speak without shattering, though as you can see, something in me has already shattered. Some piece of body in my soul, some metaphysical window that kept you out, or kept me in, or kept up the distinction between your nearness beating like a heart and the excruciating sky of your absence. Yes, I know your absence means you've come too close for me to understand your question, or distinguish you from the stars of pain you refuse to constellate into a sign of redemption. One of the radical things to me about these poems is they were not only written in the first person, but they refer to my body, my physicality, in a way I'd never dared to do before. This morning we're quiet, sad maybe, but quiet, weaned from the dramatic breast of torment that kept us tossing toward and away from each other all night, exposing our nakedness, as the covers we fought over in our sleep became smaller and smaller. And maybe you hurt me badly. Maybe you said and failed to say words I can never forgive. Maybe you left bruises on my breasts. And maybe my love for you became a kind of hatred, my clinging narcissism. Maybe I was sick of you, and maybe you were responsible for my sickness. And maybe my sickness was a form of love you had no choice but reject for both our sakes, for the sake of what's left, lying quietly this morning, bruised and stripped, nursed by the milk of aftermath, the sad but nourishing quiet that flows from the breasts of longing and disappointment. Your disappointment that my longing for you couldn't lead me to accept the body you bestowed upon me like a kiss, a hard kiss, a kiss with teeth and invading tongue, but a kiss nonetheless. And my longing to disappoint the presumption you call love, no matter what you do to me, no matter what I've said. We lie here in the quiet, soul to soul, one an exploding universe, one a sliver of glass, clinging to each other in the physical silence of this narrow bed. This book of Psalms is a sequence, and so it charts a changing relationship with God. That was maybe the nadir, what I just read you. Things are getting a little bit better here. Here you are again, a breath of vastness leaking through the window, your little brother Death, he of the heavier breathing, left open so he could come and go, though he knows it's you I'm waiting for, the breath of you that entered me once, and refused to leave until the mud I was learned to rumba, or at least to shudder in your presence. To love you is to be afraid. I get that. But I'm not afraid of your love, but of the chance the mud I am will never inhale enough of you to get the fuck up and dance. This is the last of the Psalms I want to read. You turn out the lights, one by one, in rooms I didn't know we had. Rooms where, if I wasn't me, and you weren't you, and the place we share weren't the size of a postage stamp, we could be having sex, or something more intimate. A conversation about headaches that won't stop, or lives that won't start, or the plans you have for all those sparks from all those shattered worlds that never had a chance to learn how lucky they were to be created by you. And all those little fallen lights you turn out one by one in the echoing mansion you build from our love, with room after room I'll never know, because my spark of a heart is too full of shards of shattered worlds to have room for anything but you. And just quickly want to read the last poem in my latest book, Impersonation, which is happier. It's called Making Love. I reach for God and brush your breast, reach for you and brush God dangling and tipped, gathered over years of concealment and revelation into this teardrop of flesh spilling toward my lips. I don't know what's entering me. I don't know what I've entered, or when God became a shudder of pleasure, compressing the universe's exploding center into this triangle of desire, so that touching you is touching God, swaddled in arms and legs, shy as a new-made planet. You and I, breath-filled clay, were created to inhabit. Thank you. Good night.